stories to be told, treasures to be found, silver and gold, dollars and pounds, never worth more than the stories of a town.
Back in 1837, a group of Scottish squatters came up from Port Phillip Bay, about 100 kilometres away. They camped here at a place known then as the Black Swamp. A year later, they established a sheep station by the name of Ballarat. The transition from sleepy sheep farm to gold rush capital began in 1851 with the discovery of what was to become the richest alluvial goldfield the world had known. Ballarat's gold rush triggered a rush of immigrants from around the globe. They poured in via ports at Melbourne and Geelong. By 1853, an estimated 60,000 diggers were working in and around the town. That year, a staggering 10,000 kilograms of gold was shipped via the official police escort to Melbourne, and twice that amount went through unofficial channels. The gold found here at Ballarat was pretty unique. It was 99% pure, as these beautiful nuggets show, which is about the purest gold found anywhere in the world. Stories of the goldfields amaze me. There was more champagne consumed here in Ballarat in the 1850s than anywhere else in the world. And the ice to keep it cool? Well, it had to come from the US. Was it any wonder they drank so much champagne when they were finding nuggets like this one? This is the Welcome Nugget. It's the second largest nugget found anywhere in the world, weighing in at a cool 2,217 ounces. It's worth around $2 million in today's money. Although it was found in 1858, it just shows how easy this alluvial surface gold could be won from the ground. But not everyone was this lucky. A young Irishman by the name of Peter Lawler arrived in Ballarat in 1854. He staked a claim on the Eureka land and was immediately struck by the distinct air of unrest hovering over the goldfields.
It was a tent city. It was crowded and it was busy. The biggest issue was the miner's license. 30 shillings a month, and it didn't matter if you found gold or not. 30 shillings is a lot of money. And for what?
It wasn't surprising that pressure started to build on this instant town. Infrastructure, such as transport, was hopelessly inadequate. The mandatory tax system imposed by the struggling Victorian government was deeply resented, and the goldfields administrators were oppressive and corrupt. In the early days, with a plentiful supply of alluvial gold around, the tax was simply a nuisance. I was going there. Anytime. But by 1854, the pickings became slim and the tax was much more of an imposition. And the officers charged with enforcing the tax were mostly ex-convicts from Tasmania who employed methods that weren't designed to win the hearts and minds of the diggers by any means. Any officer who found an unlicensed digger was entitled to keep half the fine issued. The lowly paid law enforcers were very eager to uncover illegal miners through any means possible. It was called digger hunting. Questions began to be asked on the Ballarat goldfields. Most diggers were paying tax and operating under laws decided by a government over which they had no control. The diggers couldn't vote.
The hotel was owned by a character named James Bentley,
who was a known sympathiser of the local law enforcers and corrupt administration. On the night of the 7th of October 1854, a young Scottish miner by the name of James Scobie was brutally attacked and kicked to death outside the pub. Bentley was blamed by diggers for Scobie's death. He was brought before the magistrate, who just happened to be a close friend, and was subsequently acquitted. On the 17th of October, disgruntled diggers rioted and the Eureka Hotel was burnt to the ground. 3 diggers were arrested and jailed for arson, and the injustices of the corrupt administration were brought clearly into view. The Ballarat Reform League passed their Bakery Hill Charter on the 11th of November. It was supported by over 10,000 miners and called for sweeping changes to the administration of the goldfields, an end to the licensing laws and immediate parliamentary representation.
The inalienable right of every citizen to have a voice in making the laws which we are called upon to obey. Taxation without representation is nothing more than tyranny. The people are the only legitimate source of all political power.
These were not unreasonable demands. The reaction of the Hotham government was swift. He immediately increased the military presence here in Ballarat. This BRL uprising was to be quashed. 18 days after the release of the Charter, 12,000 people gathered on Bakery Hill. That was about a third of the total population of Ballarat. The Southern Cross flag was unfurled, and Peter Lalor, the newly elected president of the Reform League, made an impassioned speech.
We swear by the Southern Cross to stand truly by each other and to fight to defend our rights and our liberty.
This oath echoed around the crowd as all the diggers looked to the flag and pledged to fight for justice. After the meeting, licences were burned, firearms were readied, and material was gathered to build a stockade. The diggers expected an immediate attack, but the military contingent waited in the wings to make their move. In the early hours of the third night, a Sunday morning, when many of the diggers had returned to their families, 276 police and soldiers stormed the stockade. The battle lasted a mere 20 minutes. 22 diggers and 4 troopers were killed. The diggers had been caught totally by surprise.
It had been brewing for a while, but God, it seemed to escalate quick. If I had my time again, I would have been better prepared. We didn't want a battle. We just wanted justice.
During the battle, a bullet shattered Lalor's shoulder. He escaped, but the arm was amputated. A £400 reward was offered, but later withdrawn. In fact, by 1855, Lalor was a key independent member of the Victorian Parliament, a position in which he was to serve with distinction for another 32 years. In a speech to the Victorian Legislative Council, Lalor said,
If democracy means opposition to a tyrannical government, then I am and will ever remain a Democrat.
Interesting how many key historical moments in Australian history have taken place in hotels. This is Ballarat's first and oldest. Craig's Hotel has hosted some very significant events. It was here that the Royal Commission into the uprising was held. Eventually, most of the miners who were arrested were released. And in the end, the aims of the Ballarat Reform League, well, most of them were achieved. The hotel became the temporary council chambers, and the first meeting here of the 7 elected representatives from Ballarat included none other than Peter Lalor. For many, the rebellion in Ballarat stands for far more than just miners' rights. It's become synonymous with an iconic Australian catch cry: the fair go, the rights for the underdog, multiculturalism, and the creation of our modern national identity. Some disagree, but perhaps Peter Lawler summed it up best when he wrote many years later.
"'Tis better as it is now. We not only got what we fought for, but a little more. It is sweet and pleasant to die for one's country, but it is sweeter to live and see the principles for which you have risked your life triumphant. I can look back calmly on those days. We were driven to do what we did by petty malice and spite."
Ballarat's evolution from these tumultuous beginnings was comparatively smooth. The evidence of the abundant wealth from the gold rush can be seen on almost every street corner.
I think Ballarat, as the site of the Eureka Stockade, is about as close as you can come to having a genuine birthplace for democracy and civil rights in this country. And it's that great honour that makes this town an Australian icon.